Here's how I start my brew day. Weigh my grain, but I mill it myself, and they say credit card thickness for the grain father. I don't know if it's the malt I use or whatnot. I find that it just takes too long to mill. So what I do, I've got a 1.4mm gap on my 2mm roller, and I mill it twice. Now I find that I get really good efficiency, around 85% in my mash, by doing it this way, and I haven't had a stuck sparge yet when I've had this as my system. So today we're doing a split lager batch using two different lagers. The two lagers we're going to try are the Mangrove Jack's M84 Bohemian Lager and the Saflager S23, which they say is estuary, but we'll just see how it turns out. So I've only got one packet of each, and so will be one packet for 11 litres each. So my brew day. This is my sparge water tank. It's just a hot water urn. I set it to 78 degrees. One thing with the sparge water, you want to make sure the pH of this water is right too. So I have added some citric acid to this. Seven. Perfect. By the time that runs through the grain bed, that should be at about pH of 6. So I turn that on, and by the time I'm ready to sparge, this will be up to temperature. Next thing is my water chemistry. Because I'm making a lager, I want to have good yeast health, so that requires a little bit of chloride in the form of calcium chloride. So I've got 1 teaspoon there, 4 grams roughly. That'll go in my mash water and that should drop the pH with the calcium ion. Dissolve that in. So next thing, we set up the grain father. So when we're setting up the grain father, we put in our grain basket, bottom plate, malt pipe, turn it on. I know this is the old system, I just don't want to bother with the new one just yet while I'm reading about all the complaints. Hold set, get your temperature. Today we're doing a 30-minute mash at 64 degrees, and then I'll bump it up to 71 for another 30 minutes before I mash out. So set. Then there's a, you can see it just, that it says mash there. Flick it to that, and to heat it up faster, you put it on the normal, which is the 2000 watt. So we also measure the pH of the water here to know if we need to adjust the pH before we start. So 6.7, 6.5, 6.6. So that's going to be pretty good. We'll see how the 4.5 kilos of grain go with that. So we'll bring that up to temperature and then we'll mash in. I've mashed in. Time to measure the mash pH. and we're aiming for 5.4. For those of you that have seen a couple of recent brew videos of mine, you'll notice I don't put the top plate on straight away anymore. Gives me easier access to do a turning of the grain bed. Yeah, doing a 30-minute mash at 64 degrees, and that's for a beta amylase rest, and that brings out a lot of maltose for the yeast to eat up. And then I'll increase the temperature to 71 for an alpha amylase rest for another 30 minutes, and that gets me some different sugars that the yeast will be able to ferment some, and some will stay in solution to give it a bit of sweetness. The turning of the grain bed also increases your mash efficiency, and yeah, it increases it to, I found, to around 85 or above %. So we're 20 minutes into this 30-minute mash before we increase the temperature. Okay. So it's been 30 minutes. Time to take it up to the alpha amylase rest. Now I know it looks cloudy, but I've put the top plate on, and in a few minutes that'll be clear as crystal. There you go. As you can see, that is crystal clear wort after about 10 minutes. Howdy brewers. Well, it's the end of the brew day. I'm going to do a no chill again, just because I'm out of time. As you can see, the wort is coagulating well from the brew bride I put in. I'm just going to leave that another few minutes before I start to put it into the brick for chilling, and then tomorrow, when it's down to pitching temperature for the lagers, I'll split them into the 2 batches and add the yeast. Alright, we've got our 2 yeasts ready to pitch, and we're about to split our batch with the wort we made yesterday. Chilled overnight, ready to add. I've sprinkled both kits of yeast on top. Yes, I could have rehydrated them, but I've been brewing for a while, and I know that a half batch with 1 sachet, even though it's a lager, will have no issues. I'll stir it in a minute. So I've labelled each one, and in a few weeks I'll give them a taster. It was a very good brew day. Cheers.